My son was a good boy, words of a mother. As he's laying down on the asphalt, bleeding out on the corner, she's calling on Jesus' name, asking why did they kill him. My son was a gentle soul, he never do nobody nothing. Then a man shout, woman.
All right, everybody, so welcome back. This is where we are starting this morning. We are looking at the situation at the schools. Some of the headlines: 5 schoolgirls charged with assault. We will purge our schools of this. That's according to the Prime Minister. And of course, tutor talking, calling for a unified solution as it relates to the entire situation at schools, including the use of drugs. So more startling claims about the use of illegal drugs by school children in this country. This morning, we examined the issue with Garth Clair, Director of NGO Eye on Dependency. Garth, good morning, and thank you very much for speaking with us this morning. We do appreciate it.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Marlon. You know, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah.
But
so, Garth,
this
is not a new conversation. In fact, I believe it was a former education minister who last year spoke about the use of illegal drugs by students. We are hearing the conversation again, this time from the Homeland Security Minister, who speaks about the use of methamphetamines by students. How serious is the situation, judging from your experience and some of the data that you may have? How serious is the situation concerning the use of drugs by school children?
Marlon, it's when I heard that statement, it was a little too late from the last Minister of Education, and I think that was just talk because nothing was done about it. You see, the sad thing and the irony is today is World Drug Day, you know, as International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. And the theme this year is Stop Organized Crime, break the cycle by stopping organized crime. This has been going on for the last 15 years, Marlon, when it all came to light. Remember when we were on Ruston Bay Street, we interviewed 2 students from 2 secondary schools in North and Southwest Trinidad. And the revelations that they made on that program, it was so damning that we had to call who was ACP Piggott at the time, he's deceased now, to come pick them up and take them home because they came with Derek Chabot. Since then, and when we heard that, we said, no, we need to let the Ministry of Education know about this immediately, because one of the students even spoke about teachers exchanging marijuana with students for good marks, and was like, what? So, but instead, what happened was we were accused of bad talking the education ministry, rather than taking the information and try to nip it in the bud. It was a kitten back then. Now it's a huge Bengal tiger. Now we you know, this Homeland Security now is left to deal with what we tried to prevent 15 years ago, because our independency is 24 years. Natasha and I have been plugging away at this, screaming from the mountaintops, please do something about it. We even suggested, when Mrs. Manning was Minister of Education, and you see how far back I'm going, and Stephen Williams was the head of Student Support Services, put substance abuse on the curriculum. Let's start fighting back from then, because most of our students were still untouched. Nobody took us seriously. We were treated like the boy who cried wolf. So now that chickens have come home to roost, now Homeland Security now have to go and deal with the issue, and Ministry of Education. It's not fair. And if I knew this would have been so difficult back then, I would have just stayed where I am. But thank God I met Natasha at least, and I had a chance to meet you at I-95. But it's bad.
Yeah. Studio, could you please move that bar, please? All right. That's not what we're speaking about right now. All right. So I want to look, Garth, at the culture Because you're saying, well, this is a problem that we have been, or you would have noticed about 15 years ago. From 15 years ago to what you are seeing now, I'm sure that the culture has changed. And
Yes.
what the students would have been using 15 years ago, they may be using new things now. What is the situation?
Yes, and you're correct. The list has grown exponentially. When we just had to remember, my journey was with crack cocaine. And so we had crack cocaine, marijuana. You still had the, back then the older guys used MX and all of these things. But when the war on drugs started, and drugs won the war on drugs, because when people were concentrating on marijuana and cocaine and trying to stop that, then guys got back into the labs. And they came up now with lab-made drugs, opioids, new psychoactive substances. So now the pills started to flood the market, and then we had drugs like Molly, and now it has grown to ketamine and crystal meth. You have meth, this other one, ketamine. It just kept growing. So when you were looking in one direction, up comes another, and then you had the synthetic marijuana, and then they came with edibles. So you have these lovely looking edibles. Remember St. Joseph Convent in San Fernando? I don't know if anybody remember that news, but St. Joseph Convent San Fernando had four students being arrested for going into school with marijuana-laced brownies, which is even more dangerous, because these brownies, these edibles, where if they're not consumed properly, can get people to visit being taken to the emergency room, And then there was in a primary school in the East, where 4 primary school students were found using the product called lean, which is that famous concoction that made famous by Lil Wayne, which is cough syrup, Sprite, and sweets mixed. So you see how many things came on the table after. Then there was a report of students at the university using pills to help them study. These are stimulants. Most of them are stimulants. And then, of course, the energy drink market came on the scene. So now we have children mixing punching and energy drinks together. It's a whole big mess now. Remember that report of that mass ban, where law enforcement intercepted 2,000 ecstasy pills heading to the mass ban so that they could give to their masqueraders. We had the Zessa pill phenomenon. Was the same thing. I mean, zesting is a behavior. So it means that when you take these pills, you behave a certain kind of way. So that's why it was called Zessa pills. But these are the same stimulants, ecstasy and LSD and all of these things that a Chinese guy was arrested last year.
Let's talk a little bit. You speak about the behavior. Let's speak about what happens or the impact on an individual when they use these drugs. Okay,
so these drugs are stimulants. So which means that when they are taken as opposed to depressants, like marijuana that's supposed to have you laid back, alcohol that's supposed to have you laid back, and still, but these are dangerous. The anger, that's one thing. Paranoia, not getting into fights and arguments, dropping grades. These are some of the signs that parents notice in their children after a while. They were friendly, easygoing, all of a sudden they got aggressive. And they're hanging on with a certain crew that at the drop of a hat, they want to fight. Now, the irony of these things, when you take stimulants, you have to be on the move. You can't take stimulants and sit in a class because it will have you agitated. There were reports of sportsmen, young men, taking energy drinks before they go to play. And when they don't get to play now, they have to sit on the bench with these energy drinks pumping inside of them. So these are some of the side effects of taking these stimulants. And anger and aggressiveness one of the telltale signs of ingesting these substances.
Yeah. But haven't we had a long love relationship with these drugs? And I don't know, I think that we as a country have been speaking with both sides of our mouths concerning this matter. Because, yes, you speak about the energy drinks, but this is a country where we have decriminalized a certain amount of marijuana. And I'm sure that people who are looking at us right now, they're sitting down with their 4 trees. And of course, it's four trees per adult in the home. So if you have,
which was rubbish.
If you have 5 adults in a home, you know how many trees you have, right?
Yes.
So again, and let's speak about that specifically, because I know at that time, the intention was, well, here's what. Let's decriminalize these small amounts for individuals, and let's see how is that going to impact on the drug trade in Trinidad and Tobago. And at that time, they felt that it could impact positively. And they also said, well, here's what. There are a lot of young people who have been charged with marijuana possession. Let's see if we can decriminalize it and clean the slate, as it were, for these individuals. But judging from when this decriminalization would have kicked in, and you look at what would have transpired, what's your synopsis of that?
Again, that I don't think that was a campaign strategy. I don't know, but it's one of the most foolish ideas ever. I supported it because, as you said, there are people who are in prison, unfortunately, for even one joint. But then there are people out here who are allowed to have shops set up selling marijuana. Now the thing is, they never consulted what people like to describe as the experts. If we were consulted, there are a number of people running rehab centers in this country would have told them, even if you want to go that way, 1 tree per household. 1, not 4. First off, because remember, you're only allowed to have 30 grams on you. So, 4 trees, of course, will amount to more than 30 grams. Right, okay, so that was done. Where are you going to get the seeds to plant it?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to regulate what's being sold to the public? Who is going to be authorized to sell it? They never said anything. They just said, okay, now you can have 4 trees in the yard, but you're still hearing people getting arrested for marijuana. So it did not make sense. As a means of harm reduction. But if you're doing harm reduction, then the research that we've done, and we have that to release to the public very soon, with the cannabis shops in Canada, they have a perfect model. We interviewed one of the proprietors of a cannabis store, and when they go through the list of regulations that you must adhere to have a cannabis store, is nothing like what we have here. So what we have here now are people ending up with marijuana, and then of course, if I look in my backyard, or if I look in my storeroom, and I see I have 4 or 5 coca's bags of marijuana, what am I going to do with that? Let it spoil? No, I'm going to sell it. Of course, and let people know it just around the corner. And then you'll have another guy around the other corner. Now what we have is a competition. So now some people spiking their marijuana. So they put in additives to it. Fentanyl now is one of the most dangerous drugs on the planet.
Yes.
And when you have folks being deported here, some of them not going to visual admission, and they out and about, they could team up with people and show them how to spike their marijuana. So if you have a block around the corner, people will come to me because my marijuana is stronger than yours. And so that was a huge mistake, and try as we made to reach out to the Attorney General then was Mr. Alwari to let him know that this needs to be tweaked. They never responded. So what we have today now is a sort of glut with people with cultivated marijuana and having enough to sell. They're still getting arrested, and the people who went to prison for it still there, or did their time and come out.
So you believe that there's a possibility that this decriminalization that has been done has contributed to what we have been seeing And when I say what we have been seeing, the behavior from people, the behavior of what we are seeing at the schools and heinous crimes being committed, you think that there's a correlation between two of them?
Well, we could only guess. There could be. And then I'm saying this because there are some children who are exposed to having lots of marijuana at home. There are irresponsible adults who are giving them marijuana to go to school to sell. What the contents of these cannabis, we don't know what's in them. All we know is that people are putting stimulants in them. So, for instance, when you take Molly, there's a certain type of behavior that you can scratch your skin till it comes off. And you want to fight everybody that come near you. We don't know. Here's the other problem we have. There are agencies in this country here who should be tasked or take up the responsibility, like the National Drug Council, NADA, the Ministry of Health, the hospitals, the private hospitals. They now should be collating evidence of people who come to their institutions for overdoses. We have to be the luckiest country in the world if no one has ever overdosed from intake of drugs in this country here. When children do what we see on video now, do we run tests on them? How do we know what's in their system? The secrets in the blood. Let's start, get legislation where now the people can have their blood, their samples taken, and test to see what's driving them. Because we are getting calls from mothers on a daily basis. Yesterday we got 2 of, and the story is always, my son was very bright, very enterprising young man, very humble. All of a sudden, he cursing me and stealing my money and staying in his room for long periods and all these things. We can only guess. So what I advise parents to do now, go out on your own and get drug test kits and test your children. Once you notice their behavior start changing, get a drug test kit and get a test. Get your own test done. Because there is no way for us to know right now what's the driving point and force out there, because we are just guessing. So when we see the behavior, like that video we saw of a young man just simply walking up to a man on Charlotte Street, brace him against a wall and snatch his gold chain off. What is he on? We don't know. But I know when I was using cocaine, once that craving starts, I never tried to rub anybody, thank God, but you put anything down, I was going with it. My mom had the brunt of that, you know, and their children, their parents' homes experiencing that right now. So we have a lot of work to do with regard to collecting data. You know, we are a country not strong on that. So we have to start collecting data on, because of the list of drugs that we have available to our children now, we have to start collecting data to see which is the most predominant and which is the one causing what we're seeing, if that is the case.
Yeah. So what is the solution to this issue, Garth, when it comes to the use of illegal drugs by children? What do we put in place for them?
First of all, we have to start the collaboration. Secondly, the state must get involved by getting a state rehab facility, a state-run rehab facility opened again. You know, the last one we had was shut down, right? That's at Piparo, which was the ideal spot for rehab facility, not because of the ambience and location, but because that place was owned by a drug lord. Mm-hmm. So when Mr. Ramesh Maraj and Madeline Albright got together and cut the ribbon there, it was the perfect place. It was being run properly. Then the last administration decided to shut it down without an explanation. And so now people who cannot afford to go to rehab don't have a place to take their child because of that situation. Yeah. There must be collaboration. With regard to our children, as I said yesterday in an interview, every parent in Trinidad and Tobago, take it upon yourself to do your own testing and investigation. If you ask your child for a urine sample, if your child not using any drug, they will gladly give it to you. If they hesitate, well, then you know that's a sign right there.
Yeah.
This is where we have to start. We have to start now looking to protect each and every one. Their parents need to start protecting themselves, because when this grows in your household, you will become sick as well, and it will affect everybody in the household. And the state now will have to, like I suggested, activate these state agencies like the National Drug Control, NADAP, Forensic Science Center, let the private hospitals, let's start collecting and comparing notes. Our EMS now must be outfitted with naloxone and Narcan and all of these things so that we have an all-round battle going on with it. We will never win the war on drugs, Marlon. Let's be frank.
Yes.
It's not going, we cannot win it. Once we have alcohol selling, cigarettes, I've always said these are gambling. These are three substances and activities that will never die away. What we can do is do prevention and, of course, education. Get substance abuse on the curriculum in schools. If we could start from kindergarten, that is our way to start fighting back, because drug pushers, drug lords, they do succession planning as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They do succession planning. They don't want to start, this is a business for some of them, right? I'm not judging them. They know why they decide to do this as a business, but nobody's telling, they're not telling anybody come and buy. It's available if you want to, you can come for it, just like alcohol. But so these are we have to get together with the NGOs and people who are interested in helping in this fight. Let's compare notes and let's hit the battlefield.
Yeah. Garth, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for the information this morning. Much food for thought. Where can people tune in and hear you and hear your continuous concerns about this issue that we are speaking about?
Every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon, we're on I-95.5 FM. We also have our Facebook page and YouTube channel of the same name. And we'll be observing World Drug Day this Sunday with Darius Figuera. You know, he's a very knowledgeable gentleman too with his concern. So we'll have him in studio, and of course we'll be passing on some information and education again to parents and those who will listen, youngsters who will listen. Malan, what's nice is yesterday I heard on Red 96.7.
Yes.
I mentioned at the station, and he was saying that young people were calling into his to Red 96, asking people, hey, only listen to Garth and Clair, listen to Natasha on Dependency.
Yes.
That felt good because, you know, it always felt that I-95 would mostly adults listen. When I heard that yesterday, I was really touched, and I'm happy that people at Red 96.7 are assisting us in this fight as well.
Yeah. Garth, as I said, thank you very much, and thank you for the contribution that you continue to make to Trinidad and Tobago. I know that over the past 24 years, you and Natasha, you all would have touched many, many people and would have saved many, many lives. Congratulations and thank you again.
Yes, and I want to thank you too, Marlon. Congratulations on your continued elevation. I remember Marlon was a little reporter back then, though. Marlon, look at him. Thank you, Marlon. Keep going, brother.
Thank you. Well, bye for now. All right, everybody, we are going to a very short break. We are coming back.
She holds her son lifeless body, crying out in pain. I hear a lady in the background shouting, woman, you ain't have no shame. And the same boy we used to cuss you, treat you like a dog and hit you. Now you're here with tears in your eyes, crying for this ungrateful child.